goodness, I think we had 1991, we had a record flood here in Rockhampton, and I think for the next 14 years in a row, we had below average rainfall for the whole year. So that was a challenge. That was really tough, actually. So, yeah, we don't get the rain evenly spaced across the year, that's for sure.
Hello and welcome to Unearth, the Agri-Futures podcast all about the people changing Australian agriculture. I'm Michael Thompson. When you stop and think about Australia's land and climate, it really is mind-boggling that our farmers can produce so much with so little. But the question at the heart of this episode is whether we can keep doing what we've always done and expect to achieve the same good fortune in the future, particularly when the climate is becoming more extreme and less reliable. Or are there other options? We're going to take a look at the role of sesame and industrial hemp as potential answers to those questions and examine the unique challenges emerging industries face when trying to go from good idea to mass production.
We certainly had sesame on our buns of bread rolls and that sort of thing, so I knew what it looked like, and it was a very, very small seed, so the challenge was to get it in the ground through our planter.
Meet Peter Foxwell. Peter and his wife Lynn are dryland farmers just outside of Rockhampton in central Queensland, an area best known for its cattle, intensely hot summers and regular floods. Certainly not the easiest place for dryland cropping.
We planted into moisture, and we did use a little bit. We played around with some water injection with the seed, and that worked okay. But it was into good moisture and it germinated well. But the first 3 days after it was planted, I think we had 41 and 42 degrees for those first 3 days, and the first week was sort of 40 degrees, and it bounced out of the ground. It really blew me away. So there was good moisture in the soil, and it needed to be, but it came through in very difficult circumstances and powered away, and it grew. I didn't get any follow-up rain for probably, from memory, about a month, and it didn't have a lot of rain, but we still grew it through to a crop. What I saw it do then got me excited about it, yeah.
Yeah, it was almost like that proof of concept. I remember that was a very hot, dry summer, and it turned some heads that you even got a crop off.
Oh, it amazed me, to see it stand up. And in other crops, we had corn in at the time, I think, and certainly didn't perform anywhere near as well as the sesame from a plant growth point of view anyway.
In our most recent episodes, we heard of the continuous innovation and adaptation behind the success of Australia's rice industry in becoming the world's most water efficient and productive. In recent years, the rice industry has shifted its thinking beyond just water for rice towards where does rice fit into the broader landscape and other farming systems. CEO of the Rice Growers Association, Graham Kruger, says rice is now just one option in a suite of crops that rice farmers will grow in combination, with the environment the key driver of those decisions as to which crop to grow when.
The productive water pool is shrinking. And so we're seeing farmers, when we say our farmers now, they're not just rice growers. They're irrigation farmers. Rice is just one of the things in their mix. So it's trying to find understanding your soils, understanding your agronomy, understanding your cropping system, and understanding and getting access to information to make the right decisions at the right time as to how you run your farm business so that it can be profitable as a whole.
Which brings us back to Peter's farm outside of Rockhampton. In such a hot, variable environment, where does a new crop like sesame fit alongside his mainstays of cotton, corn and chickpeas?
First of all, things have got to fit in with our system for me to even think about getting excited. But I guess the end goal of a business is to make money, and that's what we'd like to have as in our case, a rotation for what we do conventionally. If we can fit a rotation in that is going to make us a bit of cash, well, that's good. But it also has to fit, first of all, marketing. We've got to be able to sell the stuff. We can't do that. There's no point. And some of the crops we've looked at have no marketing networks sort of set up. So that's a challenge. But that's also part of what I find interesting. It's these things people know nothing about them um, as a field crop or a broadacre crop. So for us to maybe look at firstly how to grow them from planting to production, but also through to harvest and even sale. It's as I said, not all these crops work, but some I think have got a good fit in not just our system but other systems across northern Australia.
Mm. How much does water and the changing climate come into those considerations for you about which ones you want to have a crack at?
Yeah, well, we're dryland. We don't have any irrigation apart from our little research plots that we do a little bit of supplementary irrigation with. So water use efficiency is critical for us. So particularly something like sesame is has been working really well. It chases moisture. It's very efficient in its water use. We grow cotton, and cotton is has a reputation of using a lot of water. It's not the case. It's a very water use efficient crop. That's our experience. It chases moisture in our soil quite well. We have a cropping system that our row configuration and plant spacings and those sort of things to maximise the amount of water it'll extract from the soil. But yeah, they've got to be water use efficient because we have noticed that our probably our rainfall pattern is um, is now less winter rainfall and more predominantly in a very short time frame and mainly sort of late summer. So we have to have a crop ideally to use that moisture, but we've got to be able to store the moisture if you want to grow something beyond that either side of that summer period too.
Peter has had a crack at lots of different crops to add diversification to his farming business. Everything from fennel to coriander, from nigella to taro.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of research over the years, the last probably 28 years with CQU, the crop research team, and looking at all sorts of things from tropical crops, from things like taro, which is that has no fit whatsoever in our cropping system, but it's a point of interest that it's something new. That what makes me enthusiastic about research. Some of the spice crops, particularly Michael, things like kalonji, for example, and fennel and coriander, and some of those things that I would never have heard of to start with, but certainly would never have thought of to put into a cropping system. Looking at maybe opportunities for us, but also opportunities for the broader cropping sector here in Central Queensland and North Australia, I guess.
He's even had a crack at growing dryland rice.
We had some upland varieties of rice, so we're not growing paddy rice, not the lowland type rice varieties. So they are bred for dryland production, and they grew really well as a cereal crop. It was a great rotation for our cotton, and grew very well. They did need a reasonable amount of rainfall, so they weren't as water use efficient as some of the other crops that we've grown, but certainly responded very well to good rain during the season. Potential opportunity if marketing could get sorted out, I'd be quite happy to grow it in a rotation to our cotton particularly, but marketing is an issue, and yeah, distance I guess to possible market is a bit of a challenge.
So, right here is the big conundrum facing emerging industries. It's one thing to prove you can grow it, but for buyers and processors and retailers to emerge, there needs to be a critical mass of production, which of course will never happen without buyers and processors and retailers already in place. It's a real life chicken and egg scenario.
There's growers, particularly in the north, further north than here, that are interested. Some growers down on the downs who I've had discussions with, and they're looking for seed. They want to buy seed. They want to at least put a trial in, and I'm not talking a 10 by 10 research trial. They'll put in 100 acres or 40 hectares or bigger as a trial, or a whole pivot. There's a grower I know wants to grow a whole pivot of sesame as a trial, and that's a scale that their neighbours will look at and say, oh yeah, he's serious. Now it's time to get serious. So we're at that threshold, I guess, Michael.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, that also sends a signal to the prospective investors in the processing sector too that this thing's got legs and people, there's product coming down the line that they can tap into.
That's where that's where the industry's been. It's been a little bit tricky for the last few years, but when people are wanting to buy enough seed to plant, 200 or 300 hectares, they've done the sums. They've figured out what's going to work financially for them, and they just want to prove it. It's not about seeing if it'll work. I think they want to prove it. So that's an exciting time, and I guess each region across Queensland, Northern Queensland, and Northern Territory, WA, will expand at different rates, but there's an awful lot of area in the north and west of here that, given conditions are right, that could switch over to sesame for a season or 2 or 10, who knows, quite easily with existing gear. It fits in well with someone who might grow sorghum or mung beans or cotton or those sorts of crops where they could switch easily, harvest it with the same gear you would with a growing crop, plant it with the same sort of gear. So it'll fit in, and if rainfall is changing in the distribution through the year, that might suit maybe a later plant for sesame, where you might miss out for sorghum, for example. It'll have a fit for different people at different times.
That's Peter Foxwell describing his journey in exploring the potential for sesame in his dryland cropping operation. The industrial hemp industry has also endured many bumps along the way to establishing itself as a viable option for Australian farmers. From all the hype as a wonder crop, the confusion around industrial hemp versus medicinal hemp and other types of cannabis, to the creation of a hemp seed food market, and now the emergence of hemp fibre crops.
The fibre is in the processing stripped off the outside of the stalk, and then it's just wound into threads and made into tops, and then you can use that to make fabrics and clothing or jeans or sails. The tall ships up to about the mid 1850s the sales are based on industrial hemp. Inside that stalk you have what's called the hurd, and it's like a light pithy type substance, and that is generally used for building construction. Classic example is that you mix it 1-to-1 with lime, and then you mix that with water, and that'll make you a hempcrete block, like a Besser block, as we know, like a brick, and that's just made into Lego type blocks that used for housing construction. You can turn that material into erectable panels like you do when you see shopping centres made. You can also use that hempcrete type product concept, and you create a wooden block with marine board, and you just pack from the top down your lime water mixture, and it'll turn into a wall, and it's popular for an internal feature wall because it's got good insulation properties, and it looks attractive.
And it's fire resistant too, isn't it?
Yes. So if you had a house with walls or a featured room just surrounded with hemp, it's got fireproof. There's plenty of YouTube videos where people have a blowtorch and just have it against the hempcrete wall, and it just glows red where the flame's hitting it, but it won't ignite.
You can now see why it's easy to be distracted by the excitement around hemp's endless possibilities. So, we probably should go back to square one and check out those foundational principles that Peter listed. Where does it grow? How do you grow it well? Where does it fit into your farming system? And where are the end markets?
So it's like any new crop. It seems easy, but then it's not. Of any commodity, you need a supply chain, and in any commodity, you need people to, provide good genetic material, people that know how to grow the crop, supply on time and in full to the people buying the product. Don't oversupply them, don't undersupply them. They therefore have to process it profitably, and then they've got to try and market it. And so that supply chain pull through is probably what we're suffering as an infant industry.
Rob's role in building that supply chain is in bulking up the supplies of available seed lines.
So the hemp plant generally will give you 30 seeds for one seed. We're trying to get 80 seeds per seed, because the biggest problem in the industry is not only good varieties and knowledge about those varieties, but just there's just no volume of seed.
And if you're lucky enough to get your hands on industrial hemp seed,
It's not an easy crop to grow for beginner farmers. Like if someone says, "Hey, Rob," which happens a lot, "I've just bought a block of land. I'm going to grow some crops. I'll start with hemp because it sounds good." And I would immediately say, "Well, try something else like oats or sorghum or something more forgiving." Unlike what the internet says, well, the social media says, it's not like cactus. You know, it does need water. It needs regular watering. It does get insect attack. It is a very weak competitiveness as a seedling. So if you try and grow it, like people say in the social media, your farm will be cactus.
it's not the miracle crop that anyone can grow.
That's right.
It is a farming crop that requires tender loving care, doesn't it?
So basically, the success of a hemp crop commercially is all what you do before it comes out of the ground and what you do in the next 21 days. In that first 21 days, you want to be looking out for any fungal attacks, damping off disease, and you can seed treat for that. You certainly want to be looking out for any insects that might be just summer crop growers would be aware of, cutworms and false wire worms and other insects. So you might seriously consider protecting against that. I know earth mites, red-legged earth mites, attack it in the winter plantings in the southern parts of Australia. So you might want to consider coating your seed with a fungicide and insecticide. I would do that. Early post-emergent, probably about day 10 post-sowing, I would go into a crop and then assess if it's worth keeping or not. Pretty harsh to say, but that's when you would probably have bought a third of the crops that I've seen in the last 10 years, or should have. Then if we can get the hemp being the most competitive plant at day 25, then it's really no stopping it then. It'll go on a massive dry matter growth period from about day 25 to about usually day 100, let's say that. And by the time it gets to about day 45, nothing is able to compete with it, as people see with corn. You can so if we can get it to day 25, we're fine. Then it's a case of how you manage the water.
And once the crop is off and racing, the benefits to the farm business aren't just financial.
It offers a good rotation as a disease break. It also gives you water use efficiency, and it's a risk mitigation of your incomes. It's something you can store like hay and sell it when you want to. It's whereas the grain is obviously perishable. You need to sell that. So it's a good alternate crop. It's a good crop to keep your next generations stimulated to stay with you on the farm.
So there are other benefits while this industry is getting set up and that demand side sorts itself out. There are other benefits to your agronomy.
Oh, that's absolutely right. So I stick by this statement. A third of the crops planted don't get the harvest, but when you get a relationship with the growers, they'll say, oh, "Wow, you should have seen the crop afterwards. Whatever I lost, I made back." They got their money back the following crop.
Yeah. Well, what is it? What is it that hemp's leaving behind to make that next one so much better?
Oh, it's easy to understand. So it's a stalk, but so when we say 15-ton crop, there's 10 ton of leaf that's going to fall on the ground, full of slow release nutrients. So you've got a nice drip feed of nutrient. It sort of like sponges your inputs. So even if you take your fiber crop away, you still got 10 ton of drip feeding material. In a grain crop, domesticated grains generally have 50-50 grain stubble, like wheat, it's corn. Hemp's nowhere near that. It's probably 20% grain and 80% other stuff, stubble. And so there's a lot of material to slowly break down and drip feed for
Yeah,
you.
does the soil improve or all that organic matter going back
Soil
into the...
improver, that's
Yeah,
right.
wow.
And also,
Okay.
if you want to go in the soil microbiome, it supports bacteria spectrum really well. And
Yeah.
and anybody that has long-term agriculture knows it's fungal dominant. We need some bacteria in there, and unless you're going to grow clover crops all the time, hemp's in your rotation. Hemp's gives you that soil microbiome balance. So that's why.
Industrial hemp also adds up as an option in terms of water use and financial return.
In current yields, current prices, you'll gross about $1,500 per meg with hemp, whereas cotton and corn, which are very good, they're around the $600 mark. So you can
And
get
we're
a good.
talking about a fibrous hemp as opposed to a seed.
Oh, both. They're about. I've done the numbers, and they're both pretty much the same. So a fibrous crop, I'm saying 15-ton fibre crop a hectare,
Wow, that's a
or
lot. And that's a lot of biomass.
yeah, well, that's what hemp does. There's quite a few have been over 20. So I'm saying I'll use the term a third time grower should be, if the variety's right and the management's tuned, they'll do 15 tonne of dry matter, and just keep it simple. We'll just say they'll do 1.5 tonne of grain, and you'll need somewhere in the order of 3 megalitres of irrigation water. So definitely no more than 5 megalitres, but you have to regularly water it. So you need to be watering not every 16 days or 25 days with a massive amount. You need to be watering once a week.
That's hemp researcher Rob Eccles. Rob says that while hemp grows a lot of fibre, that doesn't necessarily mean you need new machinery. It can actually be harvested using regular balers and mower conditioners. Just make sure you keep your blade sharp. Check the AgriFutures website for all the information you need. For industrial hemp, the economics and the agronomy are adding up, but greater supplies are needed for the processing sector to invest and the supply chain to mature. It's a similar problem facing sesame, but Peter Foxwell is optimistic the tide is about to turn.
Because the industry is still not at that point where we've actually got a processor, unfortunately, and a cleaning plant dedicated to sesame. So, we can talk about world prices, but until we get a local market, it's really hard to tell. But given the world prices and the yields that we've been experiencing, then look, I think harvest costs are going to be similar to any other grain crop. I think there's room there for a good fit in a rotation financially as well as agronomically. So, yeah, I'm optimistic that things will get sorted out really quickly, and I know they are. Things are getting worked on now, but we haven't produced a commercial crop of scale yet. So, yeah, look. 12 months time could be a different story. There could be a player in the market to buy, and all of a sudden the floodgates will open. I think.
So the world price over the years has gone as high as what, US 2,000 a tonne? Is that right?
Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah, depending on black or white, there's a bit of a difference, but yeah, at $2,000 a tonne, that's for the good quality, cleaned and graded seed, which is a bit of a process being so small. But yeah, the yields we're talking, look, 1.5 tonne to the hectare. I mean, most producers are going to have to do their own sums, but um, at those sort of rates, then a rotation option for say cotton, where you want to have a break and still make money is a good opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to complete that market outlook picture, I mean, the prospects are being driven because demand in Australia, we're import dependent, aren't we?
Absolutely. Look, we could replace a lot of imported product here with our own domestic stuff, and we can play in the export market as well. There's great opportunities there, but goodness, there's an awful lot that comes into the country. Let's fill that first.
Mm. Given that you've tested the waters with a whole bunch of crops, In your experience, what is the difference between a great idea and something that's going to go to that next level? Like, why do so many of these, brilliant ideas never get to market?
You look around the world and see what other places are doing around the world and what we're not doing. That's a good start. And if there's already an established market, that makes things easy or easier. And there's a whole range of crops that are like that. But you got to get that mix of broad production and broad scale processing, marketing, all sorted out for an industry to develop. I mean, you could have isolated pockets, and certainly we haven't been looking at growing these crops with CQU to say, well, let's just grow kalonji because no one else is growing kalonji, and we could make $1 million by pressing it for oil. That doesn't interest me. What interests me is if there is other interest from other farmers in maybe looking at a rotation that fits with a crop that's easy to produce and easy to harvest, and leave it to someone else who's going to be doing the crushing and processing for all, with their skills are.
Such is the potential of both sesame and industrial hemp that AgriFutures has established 5-year programs of research for both crops. The connections formed between industrial hemp and sesame growers, agronomists and researchers through the AgriFutures projects is also opening up new opportunities and new ideas. Which brings us back to our friends in the rice industry once again, where the new multi-commodity landscape is also challenging how it is thinking about its future research needs. Chris Blanchard chairs AgriFutures Rice RD&E panel and says the new dynamic sets the scene for specialist research agencies to work more closely together in the future.
So plenty of crops need irrigation, whether it's rice or cotton or maize, and all those farmers would share problems around automation and those sorts of things. So, my vision is to try and get more collaboration between RDCs and co-invest in projects that will benefit all crops.
That naturally brings a point of tension when you've got co-investors from other sectors. How do you ensure that the growers are the focus of those decisions?
Well, the funny thing is, often those rice growers are also growing maybe a winter cereal, and maybe they'll grow maize in another year. So it's actually the same group of people that we're talking about. So I think once we get that message across that actually this is the same group of growers that we all need to be servicing, then I think we should be able to get buy-in to a more collaborative approach.
That's Chris Blanchard from Charles Sturt University, bringing an end to our episode on Australia's changing farming landscape, the future role of new crops like sesame and industrial hemp, and the challenges emerging industries face in scaling up. Next time on Unearth, we're going back to the racing stables. This time to learn the story of life after racing for Australia's thoroughbreds and to meet the people who are giving thousands of racehorses each year a second career. That's next time on Unearth, a podcast from AgriFutures Australia.